Welcome, everybody, to the salon. This, excuse me, this evening at the salon, we have Confessions of an Artist with anonymous artist Obscura. Hello, Obscura.
Hello, how are you?
I am very well. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Oh, yeah, I've been looking forward to this evening. How have you been? How's your day been?
Today has been pretty quiet, so I've been preparing certain things and reviewing some work. It's nothing too exciting.
A typical day for you?
Not really, in that it's still a bit things are still a bit quiet. So work from home, but it's the regular job is still work from home. So that's continuing, and then a lot of the creative side I haven't really still got down to it. So
Okay.
it's a case of, yes, I think everybody's going out, but the the real creativity, I think it's still a bit. It's a different type of creativity. So I would say, something going into a studio or something like that is still a short while away, but it's something that over the last 13 months nowadays that we've been having this situation. Things how you look at your own art has changed quite significantly.
So, just what what is your art? You let everyone know what your art is.
So the main thing I do is photography. So I'm into photography of travel, cityscape, dance, studio work. So it's a broad range, and I look at creating work that is abstract, and it generally has involved travel or working with people. So that it's in the last 13 months that has largely, it's not something you really do in lockdown, but at the start of lockdown I did some of the work virtually, as all of us went on Zoom. There were some shoots that were done on Zoom where you photograph over the uh, over a chat. So you have the both people have the video, and then you create the image from the video. And I'm happy that I was one of the early adopters of it.
Mm.
You see that it's changed quite a lot now, in the sense of people having full camera studio setups in their house and using remote viewing to do the shoot, which is where the photographer is operating the model's camera. But at the start, it was a more just like this. It would be like if I create an image from this conversation of you.
Mm.
So that was the early adoption of virtual shoots. And also, one of the things was that at that particular time, it allowed you to interact with people, and people from every corner of the world, more or less, because just the sole consideration was time zones as opposed to distance.
Okay. How is it different? I mean, there must be a major difference in photographing people in comparison to photographing people. There must be a major difference in photographing people physically with them in your presence in comparison to photographing them online. How has that difference affected the way you capture the moment?
It's interesting because, yes, obviously there's a huge difference. You're not holding a camera, or you're operating on a webcam, as opposed to you being in the studio, or you being present and physically holding the camera. But the interesting element was that, to a degree that actually surprised me, there were a lot of similarities,
Right.
in that, if you're working with capturing the light, for example. So you in a studio, or if you're on the street, you move the person. Here, you would ask them to move within the space that they were in, and every space will have a certain amount of light, natural light, or
Mm.
you improvise. You might have somebody using a lamp, or you so what or there would be interesting elements such as a living room made out of marble, or the sun flowing through a large window, and then the being diffused by a curtain. So it gives you an opportunity to create and also to use what is there. So it's something that it's fast moving in a way that you suddenly say, okay, let's try this, or let's try something here, or how do we adapt. So adapting is something that everyone's had to do in the last year. So it was actually interesting to be adapt to that situation and then make the best of it. And one of the things that, because of the benefits of technology, provided that there was a decent phone and a decent internet connection, you still produced an image that at the end of the day could actually be printed. You're thinking that you're producing an image that would say maybe 5 megapixels, which in the terminology of a phone would be just a couple of generations back. So even a phone 5 years back may still have thought, okay, 5 megapixels is a good image, and a current phone might be going at about 10. So in that way, it's one of the wonders of technology and how far things have come on. But it's also the fact that when you are put in, when you face adversity, it forces you to adapt and adopt new practices. So this was something that for both people who are on it working it created an interesting opportunity, and also in human interaction. Obviously, another difference would be that the person is a considerable distance away, so that they're not really seeing what you are capturing. And so to an extent, that actually opens it up, because even you yourself are not actually seeing that. You're seeing, when you printed the screen, as it were, but until the end of the shoot, until you finished, that's when you review and say, oh, okay, that got blurred. This was this maybe they just moved too far to the other side, something like that. But it's something that it changes, it shifts your focus. So if you are in a studio, for example, you are very, very all the time you're concentrating, you're obsessed with certain things, and you're constantly reviewing it, and then it could be a case where it's over analysis. And in this situation, it's a lot more freedom. It's a lot more improvised. So freedom in the sense that you're not like getting instant feedback. So that allows that freedom to express, both for yourself and the model or the other person involved in the creation with you, because you are doing what you're really feeling, rather than looking at an image and saying, no, I could have done this better.
When you say feedback, are you talking about verbal feedback, or just the kind of play that you have with your subject?
So the play, the interaction actually can take place pretty well over Zoom. That's something that surprised me. It's a positive side of it, actually, that on the virtual connection you can connect the same way as if you were standing 10 feet apart. But the review or the feedback would be that there wasn't the visual feedback of reviewing the image at the time and then thinking, I had to correct this about myself, or I should have done this differently. So that's where I think that there was an element of the greater freedom of expression. You did what you felt you were doing. It was more free when you did it, and then afterwards you look back on it. But you could look back without regret, because because of how the entire process happened.
Nice. Do you think that you would carry on the virtual shoots once you don't have to, really?
I don't think I don't think so. Other than in maybe if it's something where you want to collaborate with somebody where you're not going to be in a similar geographic location,
Yeah.
it's. But I would say that it's there's been a significant change in the field of photography in that out of necessity, a lot of people have shifted online and photographically, and particularly with the digital photography, because it's on a computer, you are able to take a lot of things online and to continue with doing things online and interact and share with photographers from different countries, different regions who are the experts in those few areas, or in because if you're talking about travel photography, a person in a certain location is generally an expert on that, and you can connect, they can share their work, you can. And so when you're looking at how photography will proceed, hopefully later this year or next year, you have now have networks that have developed. Previously you might have looked at somebody's images on an Instagram profile, but now you have met them virtually. You've shared sessions, they've shared work about the places they photographed, you've shared work, you've exchanged ideas, and hope within the next 12 to 18 months you're going to meet them in person in some of those locations. So that will be in terms of creating the image, but also in terms of after you create the image, in terms of post processing, in terms of how you look at an image. That has been something that can actually be done online. And but previously you had people going for workshops, and you have a location workshop which generally will cost few £100 minimum, and you travel to a place, you take photographs, and then you review the images, and you select the best images, or you learn techniques of post processing, something like that would become much cheaper and accessible to many people, because you wouldn't have to be doing it from a physical location. Then as an artist, it's also something that has opened up, have been like image reviews or image critiques, where you can go and present your images online, and you get feedback from a wide variety of people in different locations with different perspectives. So those are things that I see will continue. And another thing that I have been doing in the last 6 months or so has been, we've been having a book club where we've not met personally, but we've been through Meetup, and then on Zoom we discuss photography books. So we went through this book called Understanding a Photograph by John Berger. And yes, so I'm not sure if you're familiar with the work.
Yeah.
His work. So it's an art critic writing on photography, and it was a group of 4 photographers, the 4 of us who read through this book. And at times it was a hard slog, because obviously none of us is actually art school trained. So we have jobs in the real world are not photographic. So we are all, I would say, very keen amateur or semi professional, in that you have another job. But for us to look at how Berger approaches photographs and what he thinks of, and informed by his art background, and then it certainly did change the way that we will now think about a photograph, or as the title of the book says, how understanding a photograph. Because as a photographer, you approach it in a certain way. You look at the photograph, you look at the composition, you look at the lighting, and then you look at the technical aspects. But what Berger was doing in that book, and when he looked at a photograph, he was looking at very many different areas, and it's a completely different approach, so that it's almost that you drop your photographer's eye and you're looking at it from an outside person's perspective and what would they look at it, and that also it raises the question now, if you have an image and you have a caption versus when you have the image and there is no caption, and also to the extent to which photographers are influenced subconsciously maybe by something else they have seen. You know, you've seen paintings, you've seen sculpture, but all of a sudden you look at it and you think, okay, is this image influenced by the sculptor? To what extent has the photographer been inspired by a painting that they've seen? Because you don't know whether the person has seen that for a particular painting when they, because you know, sometimes some of them are not so well known photographers, or also it took place considerable time back, so there's less information, but you suddenly think, okay, there's this Renaissance painting or this painting from a couple of centuries back, and then you wonder, was the photographer influenced by that? And then how you are influenced by nature and nurture, or so those are things that, you know, you suddenly gets you thinking in a different way as to how you would approach photography, or how you would approach your own creative process, and the questions that you might ask yourself, or that you think that people who are looking at your photograph will ask.
You think about the people that could potentially see your photograph when you take it.
So what happens is that I think until the lockdown and being unable to actually take the photographs, I would say it was to a much lesser extent, so that I've spent a considerable amount of time now looking at a different side of my work.
Okay.
You know, I started lockdown with let's say X images, and now I've 12 months on, I have half X, 0.5X of those images, because it's the first time that, you know, you sit down and you prune your catalog, and you get rid of a considerable number of images, and then you look at it, and, you know, one of the things is that, you know, when you create, you look at it, and you know, you think of something, you take the image, you go there, you look at the location, you look at it, you think, okay, this is what I'm thinking, this is what I want to convey with this particular image. And then you look at, you come back, you process the image, but it's still, then you think, am I conveying what I want to say with this image? But as I mentioned previously, you know, if you don't have a caption, is the person who's viewing that image going to be thinking along the same lines as you did? You know, you might think that the exposure is perfect. Sorry.
Oh no, I was just going to say, is it important that the audience member or the viewer interprets it the way that you want them to?
It's important in the sense that if you are looking at conveying a particular perspective with your image, and if you want to get that across, it's not enough that you and other photographers think about it. We will straight away pick it up. Now you need to think, how would I get this across to a person who is only going to look at it once? And that's something that, you know, there's a book as well called Command to Look, which goes by saying that, you know, you need to initially get the attention, and then you need to keep the attention of the viewer, and that, you know, that book has gone into the psychology of images, and, you know, what captures the attention, so that, you know, something that what makes you look first won't keep you looking on. So similarly, when you need the viewer to look at your image, and then when they keep looking at the image, you want them to be, you need to be able to communicate to them. So you have to see how would somebody, for example, read the image. How would a person read a particular image, and how would people in general read an image, and then that would be what you should then try and bring that into your process.
Are you
Because I think
thinking in
that
terms
if
of?
you,
I know, I was just going to
sorry,
say, are you speaking in terms of the concept of the photograph or the kind of style and
it's everything. I mean, for
oh,
example, if you're going to be if you for you to be successful as a photographer, or for your images to be successful, to to be if your images are going to be picked up by a gallery, featured by a gallery, or as an artist if you're going to be represented, it would it you need to create those images that resonate with people, that speak to people.
mm,
And to do that, you do need to be able to understand how best to communicate, because as photographers, you understand the language of other photographers, and you're in sort of like a bubble that you operate in, where you're looking to impress other photographers, but ultimately it's a it's a bigger audience, and it's something that it's I think it's something that's helpful to any artist to be actually. And if you're a person who's lucky enough that you retained your job, for example, and that you could take 1 year out without being actually shooting images, or shooting what was your core. I've been creating images now that are very different to what I was creating 12 months ago. And I've been taking images, for example, in my garden, that I never thought I'd take before. But it's something that has, in one side, my existing images, I've been able to look at them and say, okay, this is what I've done right, this is what I've done wrong. I've been able to analyze my work. I know earlier I mentioned that during a shoot you shouldn't overanalyze, but when you have built up a body of work, you can analyze it, and you need to sort of be critical of yourself. And again, another thing that you have been able to do is to be able to share images with other people and get their feedback and their critique. And by critique, I don't mean criticism, because it could easily be that somebody looks at an image and thinks, you know what, this is what I think from this image of yours. And
mm,
it could be something very simple, where they say, okay, you take an image, and let's say you're going to print it on a piece of on an A4 piece of paper, and you are going to have say 60% of the image. You're thinking of 60% of the image taken up, 60% of the page being taken up by the image. And you might talk, and somebody else might look at it and say, oh, you know what, this image, the way it works for me, it should fill as much as the page as possible. And then suddenly you've got a different person to person taking a different view of your image.
has
And
any has
yeah,
anyone
sorry, go on.
ever has anyone ever completely surprised you with their response to your image, to one of your works?
Yes, because yes, I mean, people have had something and they've looked at it and said, oh, is this what you photographed? And I said, like, you know what, I never thought of it. So I never thought of it like that. And then it definitely opens your eyes, because it's something that is interesting, and it's something that catches you off guard almost about your work. We're thinking, you know what, I never thought about this, but yes, now that you've told me about it, it's something that I
Mm,
would certainly want to look at. And also, I mean, if I look at some of the work that I've done recently, I mean, I would say that I've kind of gone towards some bit more contemporary photography, because I've been restricted to the garden, and I've actually sort of almost said, okay, I'm going to restrict myself to a very small space,
mm,
so that within that I want to create an image. And it's been a very interesting experience, because you can take a very small space, the size of a small bedroom, and if you tell yourself, okay, I'm going to create images that have shadows, images that have a lot of light, images that nobody knows where they were taken, you could zoom in, have a small crop into a small image, or a small part of, say, a tree, and create an image, and then present it, which in a way that it looks like it's something completely different.
guess there's beauty
And
in every crevice of the world.
yes,
Mhm.
because I mean, it's also like setting yourself a challenge and saying, I want to create an image here. Like, one day I walked into the garden and said, okay, you know what, I want to create something that looks dangerous, something that looks mysterious but gloomy. And it was just a few branches that didn't have any leaves against a cloudy sky.
You always know
And
what you want to capture.
sorry.
Do you always know what you want to capture? Do you ever just go off wandering and happen upon something that you find takes you
Yes,
away?
I mean, so yeah, it's exactly. So that's why I say that. I mean, I've like moved into, like, in the last few months, we're doing more contemporary work out of the restrictions, because normally what would happen is that if you when I if I'm doing, for example, travel photography, I
Mm,
would I would prepare myself about the place. I would go. I would know the best locations beforehand. I would try to plan for them. I would try to think of certain things that in a city or a location is what I would be looking for. But it's something that you need to do, is you need to live the smells and the sounds of a street. You need to observe what's going on, and from that you you pick something up. You might pick up the most interesting thing that you shoot might be, because you set out to shoot something, and you
yeah.
think, okay, I'm going to shoot this today. But you walk out there and the thing that you were planning on shooting was not there, but you observe something else. So it's always important to have an open mind.
Mm,
But the difference would be that, if you're looking at, say, in contemporary, where, when I went out and said, okay, I want to create something which is dark and mysterious and sinister, I'm not I'm looking for something to give me that view. So it's like having a vision, and I'm trying to create that vision, so that then the challenge is almost like, where in this restricted space can I find something that will allow me to express this. Whereas in general, I would definitely advocate an open mind when you are doing shoots
mm,
anywhere, because you should always, and even in the studio, that's something that I always firmly believe in. I'm like, I tell the person, you need to express yourself. It shouldn't be based on recreating something that I've done, or recreating something that you've seen someone else do,
mm.
because the best images come if that person is actually doing a performance and they're expressing themselves, and then we capture an image. Because it's not like, say, for example, a headshot that, it doesn't have to be standard or a passport photograph. It's you do want to have a photograph that's a window into the person. So for that, you need to be open-minded. You need to adapt within the setting that you're working in.
At what point during the process do you get the most joy?
So it's usually the creative process. The shoot actually is when you like have that particular buzz where you're interacting, you're creating, you're making something. But the it's when you have the final image and everyone's happy, and you've suddenly got something that you think, okay, you know what, I can put this up on a wall.
Mm,
That's the moment that you know it's been a success.
mm, it's nice. Our time is about to end. You have a gathering on Saturday. Can you just let
Yes,
people know what that's
on
about? Sorry,
18th
Sunday.
Sunday. Yes, Sunday 18th April, we'll be having a gathering which will be on communicating by light and movement. So I will be looking at how light and movement have been used in art and in photography, and how the expression, how that communication has been done. And I'll be going through a series of images, and I'll be inviting the participants to give their feedback on the images, and then I'll be telling them what I think, or my interpretation, and we hope to have a discussion on that. And I look forward to seeing people on the day.
Oh, me too. I'm really looking forward to that. Thank you so much for being a guest on
Thank
Confessions
you.
of an Artist. and
Thank
just
you
being
for
a
having me.
contributor. Oh, you're welcome. For everyone, please stay tuned because we have a very special announcement from Galleria, which is going to premiere at 8:15. So stay tuned on our YouTube channel because we have a premiere at 7:45. See you soon at the salon. Bye.